I got to figure that out, guys. Sorry, I don't know why there's no audio on that screen. After this stream, I'll figure out the audio issue. That's really weird. I don't know what's going on with that screen. I got to figure that out, guys. Sorry, I don't know why they're there. Just checking. All right. Yeah, so a confirmed issue, right? Story of my life. So we're going to watch the opening statements. This trial is currently happening now. And this situation has to do with a bar fight. This took place in New Hampshire in January 28, 2023. This is the picture of those two guys. Let me just show you a little, maybe a zoomed up. I thought I took, here we go. Okay. That's, well, yeah, I got to get out of the way, right? So this is the guy that shot and killed Timothy at this bar. They had multiple encounters. It reminds me of back in the day when I used to go out clubbing or barring or bar hopping, and at that time in that age, it's all about ego. It seems like it's not even really about having fun. I had to stop hanging out with the group of people that I was hanging out with because nothing but trouble hanging out with the guys I was hanging out with, and it was just a bravado thing. And once I switched the people I was hanging out with, and once I switched the type of music I was listening to, started listening to house music and having a blast and popping pills. This is back then. I had a whole lot of fun. So this guy here, he had claimed during the altercation, he said this, he was a professional fighter. Let's go through the article a little bit from Law and Crime, and then we'll watch the opening statements. And the charges, the indictments is, so the first charge is 1 count of second-degree murder for knowingly causing Pouliot's death by shooting him. By the way, he shot him 9 times. Okay. Second charge, 1 count of second-degree murder for recklessly causing the death of Pouliot under circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to the value of human life by shooting him, which I think it was Pouliot, though, that kind of was the aggressor and his friends, and actually kind of went and followed this guy. But I don't know, this guy did pull out his gun and shoot. Charge 3, 1 count of reckless conduct by DeLee, or that in DeLee recklessly placed another in danger of seriously bodily harm by means of a deadly weapon by firing a pistol multiple times in the proximity to occupied motor vehicles and or pedestrians. So this happened in the early morning hours of January 28, 2023. DeLee and Pouliot got into a verbal altercation inside the Goat Bar and Grill. Kind of takes me back, like I said, to my ridiculous, dumb days when I was younger. Even though I wasn't the instigate, the friends that I hung out with were always causing something. According to the court documents, on the night of the alleged crime, DeLee and Pouliot were at a bar with their own friend groups. Tensions grew between the two groups after someone from Pouliot's group allegedly got a little too close to one of the women in DeLee's group. Pouliot was later heard saying he could punch out DeLee in one punch because he was a professional fighter. Which, that's another thing too. I thought I heard that if you're a professional fighter and you go and actually get into a fight, you can get charged just for punching or attacking somebody. I don't know. And he was going to punch out DeLee by the end of the night. When DeLee was notified about Pouliot's comments, DeLee allegedly flashed a gun and said, "I'm not worried, to have protection." DeLee and Pouliot were later seen chatting at the bar, and surveillance video showed DeLee pushing, so maybe he was the first instigator, I guess. DeLee pushing Pouliot. Bouncers broke it up and DeLee was escorted away. 2 minutes later, according to court documents, Pouliot's friends approached DeLee, still inside the bar, and punched him in the face. The friend and DeLee allegedly wrestled on the floor before bouncers broke up the fight and escorted DeLee out of the bar. DeLee could later be heard yelling, "Who punched me? I'll fight you." Surveillance video from inside the Goat shows moments leading up to the deadly shooting. Eventually, both friend groups left the bar. A video then showed DeLee standing on the sidewalk outside the Goat with his friends. Moments later, one of Pouliot's friends is spotted going up to DeLee. The two exchanged a few words before DeLee punched the friend in the face. Okay, so DeLee attacked this guy. But Video shows DeLee pushing Pouliot. Bouncers broke it up. Okay. So the two exchanged words. DeLee punched a friend in the face. Another one of Pouliot's friends then approached the brawl, and he can be seen pointing at what appears to be pepper spray at DeLee. DeLee allegedly then pulled out a gun, and it fell on the ground. He picked it up and racked it. After this, Pouliot's friends backed off, and the two groups separated. Cell phone video later captured the groups approaching each other again. The video clearly shows Pouliot punching DeLee in the face. And then, according to court records, DeLee raised his gun and fired off multiple shots at Pouliot. He really knocked him in his ish. DeLee was shortly arrested after the altercation. He made several admissions to police stating, "Those kids tried to fight us for some reason. I can't believe I just effed up or F up everything." He also allegedly asked investigators, "Is there some legal defense to getting punched in the face? I just reacted." So, in February, DeLee's defense filed a motion for the judge's consideration that claimed DeLee was acting in self-defense when he shot Pouliot, and DeLee was not the aggressor. According to local reporting, in a court hearing, the defense argued there was no physical force applied by Mr. DeLee at the time of the shooting until he was punched in the face. Surveillance video shown in court captured the entire shooting. Ultimately, the judge ruled that DeLee could not have acted in self-defense and rejected his defense team's motions. Now, there's the interrogation, which I'm wondering if they're going to show it. I don't know if they showed it yet. I don't know if Manny's in the chat, because I know Manny's been watching it. That might be interesting to watch too. I was reading something about the interrogation. I lost the article. Let me see if I can pull it up. I have to find it. I restarted the computer before I started because I wanted to make sure the audio was in sync. So I lost one article that I had opened. Now it's not working. Amazing. All right. Let's start this. Let's check it out. You know what this reminded me to? I covered a case. BL says no, actually the other way around. Opening statements will make it clear for you. Okay, good. So BL, you've been paying attention? You've been watching this? Did you guys ever see, I covered this story a while back. There was this soccer player that came to Florida. I caught a whole bunch of heat for my opinion on this story at the time. Let me see. Punch. What was that guy's name? Soccer. Yeah, soccer player. Was it a soccer player or an artist? I don't think it was a soccer player. There was this famous. Oh, here we go. Pablo Lyle. Does anybody remember this? Anybody, the old school people on my channel remember me covering this? Let's see if I can find the video. I might not even be able to play the video because I think one of my videos got age restricted. Bro, this is back in the day. The video had one video had 1,700 views. Oh, one had 12,000 views. People were not happy about this video.
Here's his family.
It doesn't show the dislikes on this.
About his
Pablo Lyle. There was this whole thing where this guy, let's see.
Okay, to him or herself. Retreat is committed or.
Let's see. Where's the full video, Pablo? Let me find the other one. I just don't want to play the one that's going to get us age restricted. Let me see.
And I mean, the brother-in-law didn't mention his life being in danger, but Pablo did.
Anyway, so I'll just tell you the story. Pablo's in this one vehicle. I think it's this red vehicle, and he's on the way to the airport, and he cut off this guy on the road, and the guy gets pissed and starts following them. They come up to this red light. The guy walks up to their vehicle while they're at the red light. You can see right here, at least. Walks up to the vehicle because he's pissed, and now he's trying to like open the door. He's trying to get inside, and I guess he managed to open it. I don't know if the door was locked, or I mean unlocked, and he opened it, or if the driver opened it. And the driver, I don't know if Pablo was a driver or he was in the passenger and his brother was on either side. So they have like a little altercation here, right? When he gets out of the vehicle starts moving forward. And actually, Pablo was not the driver. I think it was his brother. He get out of the vehicle to confront this guy. His family's in the car. There's kids in the car. The vehicle starts moving into oncoming traffic, bro. Like, bro, what are you doing? So I think he runs back to the vehicle to get inside. At the same time, Pablo's coming out. Pablo claims this was self-defense, but the thing is, the victim here, at this point, he turns around, he's walking back to his car. Pablo runs up to this guy, and he's like an elderly guy, and punches the ish out of this guy one time. Punches him. Guy's out, cold, knocked out, falls to the floor, and dies. And I don't know, I had felt that like, I thought Pablo was within his rights, man, because I just felt that like, I don't know, maybe he's defending his family. This nut job got pissed off because they got caught off on the road. But I don't know if the problem comes into play where Pablo wasn't the driver and this guy had already turned around and was walking away. This guy, anyway, he got sentenced to, what did he get? 5, not a lot of time, not that much time, really, but I mean, I don't know. Mexican actor sentenced to 5 years for fatally punching man in Miami. And I've heard of stories like this, man. You got to be really careful. I've heard of people getting into altercations and just punching somebody and the person dies and you're charged. I've heard of shit like at the movie theater, any kind of place. So, 63-year-old Juan Ricardo Hernandez. I mean, I felt like he was acting in like defending his family, but maybe since the guy had already walked away. I mean, maybe if Pablo was the actual driver and punched him right as he came up to the car, because self-defense, you can like stand your ground applies in your vehicle too. But I don't know if it's because this guy started walking away and it was already like de-escalated. He went and re-escalated. Lyle's brother-in-law was taking the actor and his wife and 2 children to the airport. So, I don't know. Pretty crazy. This story made me think of this a little bit, even though this is more extreme. Somebody got shot and killed. All right, let's start.
Defendant, John DeLee, was angry. He wanted a fight. He demanded a fight. And he wasn't leaving that night until he got it. He demanded a fight inside the bar, telling Timothy Pouliot, let's go outside. Let's go outside.
True
he demanded
hopes.
A fight as...
I have a friend that carries his gun in his car all the time, but he just leaves it in the car. He never really brings it into places. And I thought some places, or maybe it depends on what state, I thought some states had laws against bringing it into a place, especially a place of like a bar.
He was leaving the bar, yelling, come fucking fight me, come fight me, come fight me, as the bouncers were kicking him out. He demanded a fight out on the street, yelling back at the bar for someone to come outside and fight him. He demanded a fight further up the street, when Timmy Pouliot's friend came over to talk, and the defendant struck him in the face, not once, but twice. And he demanded a fight when he squared off with Timmy in the middle of Old Granite Street, surrounded by both of their friends. The defendant was angry at Timmy Pouliot, and angry at Timmy's friends. He was looking to teach Timmy a lesson, but not with his fists. He was looking for a reason to use his gun. And he got exactly what he asked for, exactly what he wanted. As the bars were letting out for the night in Manchester in the early morning hours of January 28th, 2023, as the streets were filling with people leaving to go home, the defendant, John DeLee, opened fire on Timmy Pouliot in the middle of Old Granite Street. He shot 9 rounds directly at Timmy, striking him twice in the front, once in the side, and 5 times in the back, gunning him down in a street full of people, then turning and walking away. And he did this not out of fear, not out of necessity, but out of anger. This case is about rage, not fear. This case is about retribution, not protection. This case is about murder, not self-defense. Now let's back up for a moment and talk about what led up to the murder of Timmy Pouliot. This all began at the Goat Bar and Grill. This is about murder, and you will see this location on your view tomorrow. The road in front of the Goat is called Old Granite Street. And this is an overview of that area with the Goat marked in red. Old Granite Street is a short street in downtown Manchester, and it contains several bars, including the Goat. It's a place where people gather to go out on the weekend, and on the night of Friday, January 27th, 2023, the defendant went to the Goat with his friends, Matthew Soldano and Gage Chandler. Now this is a floor plan of the interior of the Goat, and you will not be seeing the interior of the Goat during your view, but you will be seeing this diagram during trial. So I want to take a moment just to go over it with you. So this red line on the right side of the screen shows you where Old Granite Street is. That's the front of the building. That box shows you the main entrance where patrons come into the bar, get checked in, and then start proceeding in. There's a main bar entrance that you'll be hearing about, or main bar section. There's a dance floor in front of a shaded area, which is the stage that had live music. And there's a ramp area that you will hear people refer to that's right next to the dance floor. Those are the main areas that you'll be hearing about during the trial. There are also several, as you can see, smaller bars and seating areas throughout the Goat. Now, the interior of the Goat contains several surveillance cameras, and you'll be seeing footage from 3 different angles. In red, something called the pool table cam, which shows you the ramp and the dance floor area. In green, there's a camera called the main and sidebar 2, which shows you the main bar and the ramp. And in blue, the main bar window, which shows you the main bar and the exit going back out of the Goat. Now, on this surveillance video, you will see the defendant and his 2 friends, Gage Chandler and Matthew Soldano. And as you can see from these stills that were taken from the surveillance photo, the defendant was wearing a gray knit hat that night and a black North Face sweatshirt. Gage Chandler, over to the left, was wearing a tan zip pullover, and Matthew Soldano was wearing a gray knit hat and a blue long sleeve shirt. Now, the defendant and his friends went to the Goat on the night of Friday, January 27th, 2023. And while they were there, the defendant's ex-girlfriend, Abby Elliott Orr, arrived with 2 of her friends, Nicole Bergeron and Olivia Leonardo. Now, the defendant and Abby had dated the summer before, and though they had broken up, he was still obsessed with her. When Abby and her friends arrived at the Goat, they went to the dance floor, where Timothy Pouliot and his friends began talking with them. You will also see Timmy and his friends in the surveillance video, and again, these are still taken from that footage that you will see during trial. Timmy on the top is the one with the curly blonde hair, and he's wearing a black sweater and a necklace. His friend Trenton Nash is to the left, wearing a white baseball cap and a black jacket. And his friend Michael Mendoza is to the right, wearing a white and black sweater. This is a still from surveillance video showing the dance floor and ramp area that I was talking about at the Goat. In that yellow box, you can see Timmy with the blonde hair, Trenton Nash, the back of his head with the white baseball cap, and Michael Mendoza. And you can see them starting to talk to Abby and her two friends, Nicole and Olivia. And in the background, in that red box, you can see the defendant watching them. Now, as soon as the defendant saw Timmy talking with his ex-girlfriend, he went over, and he started to escalate things. Now, the defendant had never met Timmy before that night, but he made his presence known now. He didn't introduce himself.
He's bigger too, a lot bigger. I gotta find that article. I think he said he's like 200 pounds.
He didn't ask how they were doing. He walked up to the group and asked Abby and her friends what they were doing with this scum.
Damn.
Now, Timmy was 5 foot 7 inches and 121 pounds.
Wow.
And Timmy was
120s, lightweight, super light. And he was, let me see how old he is. He was both young guys. Timothy was 24. DeLee. Damn, they say this dude, actually, they say the guy's 6'6", 300 pounds. Holy crap. I'm trying to find his age. I don't see it. I think he was younger, like 21, 22, something like that.
He was not armed. The defendant was almost a foot taller and about 200 pounds heavier than Timmy.
Wow.
With a handgun hidden in his waistband. Now, Timmy laughed off the defendant's name calling at first, and then he told Abby and her friends to be safe and to enjoy their night. And he politely left the group. Timmy even spoke to the defendant and shook his hand before going on his way. After a little while, Abby and her friends left the defendant, still over there on the dance floor in that red box, and went up to the bar that you can see in the yellow box area. Timmy and Michael Mendoza were at the bar, and they thought they might still have a shot, so they offered to buy Nicole a drink. And with the defendant still down by the dance floor and safely out of earshot, they talked tough to Abby and her friends. They said that they wanted to fight the defendant. They said that they were pro-fighters. And Timmy told the women that he thought he could take the defendant. 5'7", 121-pound Timothy Pouliot told Abby and her friends that he thought he could take the defendant. Now, as soon as Abby and her friends walked back over to where the defendant was, Abby told the defendant that Timmy and his friends had said they wanted to knock him out and that they were pro-fighters. You will hear that when Abby told the defendant that Timmy had dared to say he could beat him up, the defendant didn't go to a bouncer for help. He didn't grab his friends and say, it's
who would go to a bouncer? I wouldn't go to a bouncer.
Time for us to leave. He didn't try to de-escalate the situation in any way because he wasn't scared. He wasn't in fear. But he was angry. Really angry. He stared at Timmy, still sitting at the bar, now talking to an acquaintance named Isla Baramovich. And the defendant watched him. And then he confronted him. With the defendant's friend, Gage Chandler, watching behind him in that yellow box. The defendant towered over Timmy's back, and he repeatedly and aggressively challenged Timmy to go outside. Timmy kept saying no, he wouldn't go outside.
Oh, wow. That's what he was provoking him.
But the defendant kept challenging him. And Isla will tell you that she knew the defendant was a threat. And you will see in the surveillance footage that she was so intimidated by the defendant's size and aggression that she left to get a bouncer for help. But before she could, the defendant escalated from words to physical violence. He shoved Timmy. And he shoved him hard enough that Timmy slid to the left up against another person at the bar. He shoved him hard enough that it caught the attention of Brian Delaney in the blue box there, the bouncer at the other end of the bar. And Brian and other bouncers jumped in and pulled the defendant away from Timmy. Now, this is part of surveillance footage that you'll see during the trial. We're now looking at it from a different angle, and you can see the defendant's back. Here, there's his hat and his friend, Gage, standing off to the left. Timmy's blocked by the defendant. He's in front of him still at the bar.
Oh, okay, right there, right there.
Now, after the defendant shoved Timmy...
Let's see that again real quick. It was like right there. That guy's like towering over everybody. Jeez. Oh, he did like shove him right there. Damn, he like flew, man. You say he like slid across? He like touched him and his ass flew. Ah. But Timmy was saying before, Timmy, I guess, was saying that he wanted to fight him or he thinks he could take him or something. I don't know. But definitely this guy.
Now, after the defendant shoved Timmy there, he didn't ask those bouncers that came over for help. He didn't say that he shoved him because he was afraid of Timmy. Instead, when Brian Delaney asked the defendant why he was starting something with such a little kid...
That's true, the first guy to punch him? Yeah.
The defendant laughed and said that Timmy had called him a bitch. Then the defendant went back down to the ramp near the dance floor to stand with Abby and their friends. Now, Timmy's friends, Michael Mendoza and Trenton Nash, were standing in that same area, and you can see the top of their heads there in that yellow box. You will see that after the defendant assaulted Timmy at the bar, Timmy walked down the ramp and whispered something to Michael. Within seconds, Michael walked over to the defendant and took a swing at him. The defendant grabbed Michael and threw him to the ground, knocking them both into the bar in the process. Now, bouncers from the GOAT immediately jumped in to break up the fight, and along with Manchester police officer Eric Smith, they kicked out Michael Mendoza, and they kicked out the defendant, who was bleeding on the left side of his face from the altercation. During the trial, you will see, and you'll be...
The BO says he was just being tough in front of the girls. The girl is the ex-girlfriend of the defendant. Oh, no. Oh, there you go, too. The bravado. You got mixed woman into it. So Timmy was trying to be tough in front of the girls. The girl is the ex-girlfriend of the defendant.
Be able to hear footage of the defendant being kicked out of the GOAT. That was taken by actually a cell phone video from someone in the bar. And you will see the defendant here, as well as Timmy in the background and Abby, and the bouncers around him. This is the edge of Officer Smith, who you'll see in the video. You will see and hear the defendant's emotions. He was in a rage. He was swearing. He was yelling. But he wasn't yelling that he was afraid of Timmy or that he was afraid of Timmy's friends. He wasn't yelling for someone to come help him. He was yelling for someone to come fight him. He was yelling, "Who just punched me in the face? Come fucking fight me. Come fight me. Come fight me." No fear, no terror, just anger. He wanted to finish the fight. He was demanding to finish the fight. You will see surveillance from outside the goat after the defendant and Michael Mendoza were kicked out. Now, Michael was the first one to leave the bar with Trenton Nash, and they're highlighted there in that yellow circle. And when they left, they walked across Old Granite Street and got into their car. The white car parked here. Shortly afterwards, the defendant was kicked out. He didn't go straight to his car. He didn't ask for help from a bouncer or from Officer Smith, who was in the GOAT. He didn't quietly walk his separate way. Instead, he stayed on the sidewalk outside the GOAT, surrounded by his friends, with his arms raised, continuing to swear and yell and challenge someone to come fight him. Yelling, "Who punched?"
And by the way, another detail that I'm reading about this, because we were just talking about that Pablo Lyle guy that punched another person and the person passed away and he got charged. They're also claiming that supposedly when the defendant shot Pouliot, it was when he was turning away. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a big factor too, because everyone's wondering, like, you hear about like self-defense and like stand your ground, or what do they call it in Texas? Castle, whatever. If somebody, let's say somebody breaks into your house, you can defend yourself, right? But let's say they're running away. They're already outside of your house and like they're, I don't know, away from the door, but still on your front lawn, but turned. Can you still, does that still count as self-defense or what? Or can you get in trouble? Oh, yeah. And Submarine, thank you. Yeah, if you guys could hit the like button, I'd appreciate that. What's up, Christina?
Punched me, what's up? Who punched me, what's up?
Take that back. Say who punched me? So he's looking
to come fight him. Yelling, "Who punched me, what's up? Who punched me, what's up?" This is a clip of the surveillance footage that you will see at trial capturing those moments as the defendant leaves the GOAT, followed up the street by Abby and her friends as he repeatedly screamed, "Who punched me? What's up?" Still angry.
Bill says shot in the front, side, and then 5 times in the back. Damn. Oh.
Still looking for a fight. Now, Timmy also left the GOAT after the defendant and Michael were kicked out. He wasn't yelling or swearing. He didn't leave angry. He walked out calmly, and he turned left and started walking the opposite direction from the defendant and his friends down Old Granite Street. Now, at this point, Michael Mendoza and Trenton Nash were in their car. Timmy was walking away. This should have been the end of the confrontation. But the defendant wasn't done. He still wanted to fight. Now we're looking at a screenshot from surveillance video from the other direction. So we're looking back down towards the GOAT. Timmy's gone off the screen to this direction. The red box shows you the defendant, who's standing there with with Matthew Soldano, with Gage Chandler, with Abby and her friends, all in that group. And Michael Mendoza and Trenton Nash are still in this car. Matt, Gage, Abby, Olivia, Nicole were all trying to calm down the defendant at that point, but they couldn't. He kept getting more and more aggravated. And you will hear, as you could hear on that last surveillance video, how he continued to scream and yell at a street full of people leaving the bars, yelling derogatory words and insults. At this point, Trenton Nash got out of the car and walked across the street and started talking to the defendant and his group of friends. But the defendant didn't want a conversation. He wanted a fight. So he assaulted Trenton, striking him in the head, not once, but twice.
So was it really just going there for a conversation, I guess?
You can see maybe. Trenton at the beginning of this clip of the video, right here, with the white hat, and he's smoking, and he's walking over towards the defendant and his friends.
Yeah. Oh, he just straight out punched him, though. Yeah, he just... really got to say anything. Yeah. At
this point, when the defendant hit Trenton, Michael Mendoza got out of the car and came over from where he had been sitting in the driver's seat. He pulled out pepper spray and he pointed it at the defendant to get him to back down. The defendant pulled a handgun out of his waistband, dropped it on the sidewalk, picked it back up, and racked it. Abby screamed at the defendant to put the gun away. And at this point, his friends finally managed to push him up the street, away from the goat, and away from Michael and Trenton. Now, Timmy was not there when the defendant struck Trenton. He was still back down the street. But you will see on video footage where he stopped and started looking back up towards the street, toward the confrontation that was being caused by the defendant, before eventually walking back up Old Granite Street. You will also be able to see in this footage the defendant's friend Matt Soldano clearly trying to calm the defendant down as they went up the street, trying to get him to listen and trying to get him to leave. Now the defendant, Matt, and Gage, his friends, went up the sidewalk in the direction of that red arrow. Past Soho Bistro, which was another bar marked in the orange, which was also letting out at that time. Patrons were leaving at the end of the night. Michael Mendoza and Trenton Nash walked up the street but turned to their left as marked by that blue path and went into the Bank of America parking lot, which was on the opposite side of the street. Now, at this point, the defendant's path to his car, his transportation home, was clear. Right down that alley to the left-hand side of Soho, back to the Market Basket parking lot where his car was parked. Now, you may hear a claim that this alley didn't seem safe to the defendant and to his friends. Pay close attention to the video surveillance when you watch it at trial, and you will see that the defendant's friend Matt tried to get him to go this way. This was the path straight to their car. There was no one in their way. At this point, there was no one following them. Timmy was still down the street. Michael and Trenton were in the Bank of America parking lot on the other direction. That was the way home. But the defendant didn't want to go home because he wasn't done. He was still angry, and he wanted to finish the fight. He wanted to use his gun. You will see on this video how after starting to follow his friend Matt's direction and walking towards his car, the defendant turned and came back towards Old Granite Street, ignoring Matt's attempts to stop him. And you will see that Matt yelled at him, he pushed on him, he pointed down that alley trying to get the defendant to disengage.
That's crazy, man. When some of your friends are looking out for you, literally trying to stop you from making life-altering decisions. I'm sure he probably looks back on that moment, maybe regrets it. Just caught up in rage. It really reminds me of like back in the days, man, when I first came to Florida, and like the first group of friends that I met in high school. And it's just like I said, every time I get so tiring after a while. It's like every time I went to like a bar or a club, it was some type of drama. And it was because the guys I was hanging out with, that it was just about like this ego thing. I mean, these guys didn't even dance. Like they'd stand on one side of the room and the other guys and the other group would stand on the other side of the room, and they just like stare at each other. And it's like, what is the point of this shit? You know, like why are we here? Why are we doing this? It's crazy. And I remember I had one crazy situation in Miami. I'll tell it maybe at the end of the stream. I've told it multiple times before. But yeah, it's just not worth it.
But nothing worked. The defendant was angry, and he didn't want to leave. He wanted to fight. So he went past Matt back onto Old Granite Street. This is the video from the defendant in the alley.
Yeah, man, there's this guy I used to watch on YouTube. He would say nothing good happens after like 10 or 11 or 12. Like nothing good happens after. Oh, there he is with the gun in his pocket. This guy's already big, 300 something pounds, 6 feet tall, and still relying on his gun to fight somebody one-on-one. Because he has his comfort in that as well. Fights aren't fights anymore like it used to be back in the day. You can't just think you're going to get into a fist fight with somebody anymore.
The defendant pushed past Matt right to this intersection, marked in red, to square off with Timmy. He didn't go down to the alley to his car so he could leave. He didn't take a right towards the snooze center in downtown Manchester to just leave the area. He didn't walk into Soho, which was open right there in the corner, or back to the Goat, which were full of people. He didn't yell out to security or to anyone else for help. He didn't use his cell phone to call 911. Instead, the defendant chose to walk straight out onto Old Granite Street and square up with Timmy and his friends. And let's be clear, you will see that this was not 1 against 3. Matt Soldano was standing right here next to the defendant. The defendant's friend Gage Chandler was right off to the corner over here. This is Timmy and Michael Mendoza and Trent Nash. And as they stood there, surrounded by people leaving the bars, as they faced off and argued back and forth in the street, Timmy gave the defendant the excuse he'd been looking for all night. Timmy reached up and punched the defendant in the face. The defendant immediately ripped the gun from his pocket and started pulling the trigger, without hesitation. He pulled his handgun out for the final time that night and shot 9 times, straight at Timothy Pouliot. And he was so close to Timmy and so focused on pumping those bullets into him that he hit Timmy 8 times. Continuing to shoot, even though Timmy started to turn and fall away to the ground after the first gunshot. The defendant kept shooting after Timmy's back was to him. He kept shooting all the time that Timmy was falling to the ground, his body full of bullets. 2 of those bullets in his front, 1 in his hand, and 5 in his back. 5 shots in Timmy's back, because this wasn't about fear. This wasn't about a threat. This was anger. After the defendant pulled his trigger 9 times, he briefly watched Timmy's body on the ground. Then he turned his back on Timmy, turned his back on Timmy's friends, and simply walked away. leaving Timmy to bleed out and die on the pavement. Now let's be clear, the shooting happened very fast. And it happened that fast because the defendant pulled the trigger that fast. So fast that no one on that street had time to process what he was doing. No one had time to stop him. The most that Timmy could do was turn away. But that didn't stop the defendant. He continued to pull that trigger even after the first shot. When Timmy started falling, the defendant kept shooting in spite of the people in the streets, in spite of the cars in the streets. He opened fire close enough that people ran for cover, close enough that Isla, who had just pulled onto Old Granite Street with a car full of her friends, felt the concussion from the force of the bullets on the roof of her car. Not only did the defendant murder Timmy, he endangered the lives of all those people on the street that night.
That's where that charge 3 comes from.
Now, there will be no question in this case that the defendant pulled out a gun and shot Timothy Pouliot, causing his death. The question for you will be, do you believe his claim that he acted in self-defense?
Objection. Overruled. May proceed.
You will receive detailed instructions from the judge on self-defense at the end of this trial. For now, I'm just going to quickly talk to you about 2 requirements for self-defense to keep in mind when you are seeing and hearing the evidence in this case. The defendant is only allowed to use deadly force to defend himself if he actually believed Timmy was about to use deadly force against him, and if that belief was reasonable. You are going to see a lot of evidence that was caught on video. You will be able to see almost all of the events that I have described for you as they played out that night. You will see people's actions. You will see their reactions on their faces and in their body language. You will see people's emotions as the night played out. Watch the defendant. Watch his facial expressions. Watch his body language. Listen to his words and his tone of voice. You will see anger. You will see someone looking for a fight. You will see all the other options the defendant had that night other than shooting his gun. What you are not going to see at any time from the defendant is fear. You will not see fear of Timmy. You will not see fear of Timmy's friends.
Well, that's a good point as far as like, I mean, we barely have seen anything, right? I guess they're going to show video footage later and stuff. But, I mean, they said that he would have to feel as if Tim was going to use deadly force. And so he approached him multiple times at the bar in his face, pushed him aside. He never seemed afraid of him.
You will not see actual fear at any time throughout the night, and you will not see a reason for fear because there was none. The defendant's friends were next to him. Timmy and his friends were unarmed.
Folks, are you talking about the guy? Wasn't there like a self-defense case where somebody was in a movie theater and somebody threw popcorn at somebody and the guy went and shot him or something like that? Did he win that self-defense? Probably not, right? I don't know. I mean, the only thing is Tim attacked him first at that last moment before he shot him, but then I don't know.
Shorter than the defendant. Friends were unarmed. Timmy was almost a foot shorter than the defendant.
But my thing is too, what about George Zimmerman? How the hell did he get away with that shit, right? I don't know the whole story with him, but didn't he approach Trayvon and confront him and accuse him of whatever, this and that? And then they get into a fight, and so he decides to shoot and kill him, and then he got away with it, right?
About 200 pounds lighter than the defendant. A punch from Timothy Pouliot to the defendant was not deadly force. Instead of fear, you will see that the defendant initiated and escalated at every stage of the night. He confronted Timmy when he was talking to Abby on the dance floor. He shoved Timmy when he was sitting at the bar with Isla. When the defendant was kicked out of the bar.
Yo, the guy got away with it? Wait, hold on. Not the popcorn guy. The older guy, maybe 60, that killed a 40-year-old. That was in Tampa.
He was yelling for someone to come fight him. He punched.
Is the popcorn got away, or are we talking about Zimmerman?
Trent Nash twice on the street. He was consistently the aggressor, and he had a safe way to leave the confrontation he had started, right down the alley that Matt Soldano was trying to get him to go down. But instead, he turned and he came back, still looking for a fight. The law doesn't allow a person to instigate and escalate and demand a fight and then claim self-defense when someone punches him. When the defendant was arrested by police just after he shot Timmy, he knew he was caught, he knew he was in trouble, and he tried to convince them that he acted in self-defense. And you will hear that he claimed things that the video footage will show you just are not true, like that it was 3 against 1, even though his friends were right there. But those self-serving statements can't erase his behavior up until this point, and they won't erase what you can see for yourself on the video. The other thing to keep in mind as you're hearing the evidence is that a person's not permitted to use excessive force in self-defense, only a reasonable amount of force. The defendant shot at Timothy Pouliot 9 times. 5 of those shots were in his back. And each of those shots was a choice by the defendant to pull the trigger. You will see that every shot after the first one was after Timmy was turning away and falling to the ground. That is not reasonable. That is not proportional. That is excessive by any definition. In a moment, defense counsel will have a chance to speak with you, as I have. They may raise issues with you that I've not discussed in the opening, but which will be addressed during trial. I ask you to keep an open mind and wait to hear all of the evidence, see all of the video footage before you make up your mind. The shooting in this case was captured on a bystander's cell phone. This is a still image of the last moments that Timothy Pouliot was alive. Right after he dared to square off with the defendant, dared to punch the defendant. Of all the options available to the defendant that night, he chose the most extreme reaction, he chose the most deadly, and he chose the most permanent.
Dude, these guys are all talking. Huh?
Take the fuck back. Hey, get back here, back here.
That is not self-defense. That is rage and retribution. Self-defense.
Hey, get back.
Huh?
He shot that, they just pulling that trigger like.
Dude, these guys are all talking. Huh?
Wow.
Take the fuck back. Hey, get back here, back here.
Oh man.
That is not self-defense. That is rage and retribution and anger. And that is why at the close of this case, we will ask you to find the defendant guilty of endangering all the people on Old Granite Street that night.
They're definitely going to get this guy for something. I don't know if he has enough for self-defense, but like the other charges, so for people that joined after, so the first charge is 1 count of second. We're going to watch the defense next, by the way. So charge 1, 1 count of second-degree murder for knowingly causing the death by shooting him. Charge 2, 1 count of second-degree. I wonder why second-degree. 1 count of second-degree murder for recklessly causing the death of Pouliot under the circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to value of human life by shooting him. And then charge 3, which like they're going to nail him on this at least, for sure. 1 count of reckless conduct and that DeLee recklessly placed another in danger of seriously bodily harm by means of a deadly weapon by firing a pistol multiple times in proximity to occupied motor vehicles and or pedestrians. So we're going to do the defense part now, what the defense had to say. I did look up, by the way, the Florida case that you guys were talking about in the chat, where I remember hearing about this thing and it seems so wild to me. A retired officer was acquitted last month, but this article is from last year. He was acquitted for shooting and killing a fellow moviegoer who threw popcorn in his face during an argument. Said he stands by his actions. He was defending himself. And this, of course, is a Florida story. Bro. I don't know, bro. All right, let's check out the defense clip. The defense had to say 19 minutes.
Him says that he's going to beat up John or knock him out or something along those lines. Michael Mendoza also says he's going to knock John out. They talk about the fact that Timothy is a professional fighter, and they talk about it.
The guy might have thrown a cell phone at the old man's face too. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's certain things that people don't realize is assault. Because I remember there was one time, I think there was some YouTuber or something that grabbed or snatched the camera out of somebody else's hand. I believe he was charged with assault. I don't know if the charge is stuck. But doing things like grabbing things out of people's hands and stuff can be considered assault. Like if you walk up to somebody and try to grab their camera or slap the camera or whatever.
To Abby, Nicole, and Olivia. They're not just having a little conversation in private talking about this. They are conveying that information to the same girls that they had just been talking to earlier. We're going to knock this guy out by the end of the night. I'm a professional fighter. And so, of course, the girls go warn John.
Which, by the way, I don't want to interrupt too much. I know I've been talking a lot, but I just feel like I'm hanging out with you guys. But the fact that Tim, just trying to look at things objectively, the fact that Tim stated that he's a professional fighter, and I feel like I've heard in some places that, like, if you're a professional fighter and you physically attack somebody, like, that could be considered deadly force. I don't know if they're going to try to use that as a defense.
I'm a professional fighter. And so, of course, the girls go warn John. Why shouldn't they warn him? These guys are out to knock you out. They're out for you. And John goes up to the bar, and we don't have a recording of what was said, but we have the recording of the interaction. And sure, John pushes him. But it's broken up, and John walks away, and that is the end of it, as far as he knows. You'll also see the bartenders don't only talk to John, they talk to Timothy Pouliot. And after they do that, John is minding his own business, talking to the girls, talking to Abby and the other girls, and a few minutes later, you see Michael Mendoza in the video. He's near John, but he's kind of looking the other way, and you see Timothy work his way down the ramp. Remember that ramp that was shown to you during the opening statement? John and the girls are all standing by the end of that ramp on the dance floor. The dance floor is kind of lower than the main bar. And Tim works his way down onto the dance floor and out and whispers something, not sure what, into Michael Mendoza's ear. And Mendoza does kind of a little half moon right up to John and looks away a little bit, and then all of a sudden punches him right in the face. A sucker punch so bad you'll see the blood all over John's face. This is on the right side of his face. Michael Mendoza was not unarmed at that time. You're going to see body cam video of the police officer that's in the bar, and you'll just catch a little glimpse of it. But you're going to see rings on both of Mendoza's hands. He doesn't punch John in the face with bare hands. He's got a big old ring on his ring finger there. That explains the giant cut on the front of John's face. And you're going to see the blood coming down his face. You're going to see that in the videos too. John never saw it coming. That's why he's walking out of the bar screaming, "Who punched me? Who punched me?" He just got sucker punched in the face, and his face has been cut open. Is he upset? Absolutely he's upset. Because he's just been darn close to being knocked out after he was already told that they were going to knock him out. And when he gets outside, he's upset, and the girls are trying to calm him down, and they're trying to clean the blood off his face, and he's still upset. And the state's right. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Mendoza is across the street in his car. Trenton Nash is in the car. And Mendoza kind of hides, stays in the car. And Nash gets out, and he walks over, and he comes right up to John. He smokes a cigarette and tries to pretend that he's got no idea what happened, as if he had nothing to do with anything that happened in the bar, as if he wasn't there with Timothy Pouliot, as if he wasn't there with Michael Mendoza. And he comes right up to him, and he gets in his face, and even though John DeLee, who's just been punched in the face, tells him to get out of here, even though Abigail Elliott Orr tells him to get out of here, he doesn't. Does John get physical with him at that point? Yes. Should he have? Probably not. But he's not on trial for his interaction with Trenton Nash at that point, who, by the way, is just continuing the attack from inside of the bar. At that point, Michael Mendoza says, you know, I ought to get involved in this. Now's when he comes out of the car, gets up, stands on the snowbank, and holds up a can of pepper spray right into John's face. Right there on the sidewalk. That's when John pulls out the gun. When he is under attack, he pulls out the gun, he drops it, and he picks it back up, and he warns Michael Mendoza away. And it works. Michael Mendoza backs up and backs away, and John turns around, and John and Soldano and Gage Chandler, the three of them start walking up the street, walking away. That's not good enough for Nash and Mendoza. They follow him up the street. And I just want to back up a little bit. Remember when you were told that Tim walks out of the bar nice and calm, he's not screaming and yelling, and he walks out of the bar and he goes left. You'll see what he does on the video. He walks out of the bar and he looks to the right, and that's where Nash and DeLee are just about engaging. And he takes a look, and he walks down to the end of the street, and he acts as a lookout. He's watching the end of that street, and he's watching that interaction, and he's deciding when and if he needs to get engaged. So when Nash is confronting DeLee, you've got Mendoza in the car across the street watching from one angle, and you got Timothy Pouliot down at the end of the street watching from the other angle. They are in attack mode, and they will not leave John DeLee to go home that night. They follow him up the street. As Mendoza and Nash are following John and his friends up the street, they're yelling back as loud as they can to Timothy Pouliot, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. Mendoza is actively telling Pouliot he's got a gun. What does Pouliot do? He goes right after John, right up the street. Abigail Elliott Orr confronts him. She grabs him. She tries to stop him. She says, "Don't do it." And what does Timothy Pouliot do? He challenges her to punch him in the face. She declines to do so, and he goes on, gets away from her, and he goes on to confront John DeLee, a man that he knows has a gun. And he follows him up. Now, John at that point is facing a long, dark alley to get back to his car. Matthew Soldano is standing at the end of the street, but Nash and Mendoza are standing on the opposite sidewalk, yelling and screaming at him, harassing him, and Timothy Pouliot walks up and leads the charge. You'll see on the video, as soon as Timothy walks past Mendoza and Nash to confront John DeLee, Nash and Mendoza themselves begin following Timothy. It's a setup. Is John DeLee supposed to walk down the dark alley with these people following him? Is that a reasonable place to go? So, unarmed. Right now we know at the very least that John DeLee has been punched in the face with rings. We know that Mendoza has rings on. We know that Mendoza has pepper spray. And the three of them are confronting him. And rather than walk all the way down that dark alley, he turns around to confront the threat that's facing him. And so he does. And you'll notice, you'll see in that video, you see the three people surrounding him. You see Pouliot standing directly, almost face to face with John DeLee. And you'll see to the right, to John's right, you'll see Mike Mendoza. And to the right of Mike Mendoza, you'll see Trenton Nash. Interesting little detail that the state leaves out at that point. When you see the video of Trenton Nash following Timothy Pouliot to go attack John, he's wearing his coat. He's got a long sleeve black coat on. Michael Mendoza's already in his t-shirt. This is a cold January day in Manchester, New Hampshire. And Michael Mendoza's out there in a t-shirt. Why? Because he's about to get in a fight. Nash has had his coat on. The funny thing about the Soho footage is part of it looks to the right and part of it looks to the left. So the right looks down the alley and the left looks down Old Granite Street. And the shooting happens right in the middle. And the only footage we have of the shooting itself is that cell phone video. But between the time that Nash crosses into that blind spot, we'll call it, and the time that cell phone video starts, his coat is gone. Why is his coat off in January in New Hampshire on a cold winter night if he is not part of this fight? So he's got his coat off, right? And that's not the only thing he does. The state says it's not 3-on-1. John's got all his friends there. Well, first of all, Gage Chandler, you don't see him in that video because he is up on the sidewalk on the other side of a snowbank and on another side of the rail in front of the Soho Bistro. He's not out there in the street getting involved in this. And Matthew Soldano is confronted by Trenton Nash, who's already thrown his coat off. Hey, do you have a gun? He checks him. And how does Matthew Soldano react to that? He puts his hands up and he starts walking away. He's behind John DeLee, he's walking away, and he's facing away. And that's the moment when it is truly 3-on-1 with two other people who all mean John DeLee harm. That's when, for the second time in the same evening, John DeLee gets punched in the face by somebody that he has been told is a professional fighter. They've told him they're going to knock him out. They meant it. They've shown they mean it. And if you're standing on that street there, with a gun in your hand, knowing that these people know you have a gun and are ready to punch you in the face anyways, ready to surround you, ready to confront you, ready to punch you in the face. They do. Second time, he's been punched directly in the head. How does he know that they don't mean to get his gun? How does he know that they don't mean to kill him? How does he know that they don't mean to kill him with his own gun? The judge is going to talk to you about the definition of deadly force. So take the judge's definition and not mine. But deadly force in New Hampshire means an assault which the actor commits with the purpose of causing or which he knows to create a substantial risk of causing death or serious bodily injury. What do you think, what will you think that Timothy Pouliot meant to do to John DeLee at that time? What will you think that Trenton Nash meant to do to John DeLee at that time? What will you think that Michael Mendoza meant to do to John DeLee at that time, if not death or serious bodily injury? So the moment he gets punched in the face, again for the second time, he immediately pulls out his gun and fires. The state makes a lot about the fact that some of the bullets went into Timothy Pouliot's back. I want to make absolutely clear, Timothy Pouliot did not run away. He didn't retreat from this encounter. At the time that the trigger is first pulled, he's facing John DeLee. He falls backwards and he lands backwards facing John DeLee. He might have twisted on his way down, but he wasn't retreating from that encounter. He never did. Those 9 shots happened in a split second. The state would make you think John DeLee thought between each and every time he pulled that trigger, oh, have I neutralized the threat yet? Nope. Oh, have I neutralized the threat yet? That's not the speed that any of this happens. He's facing a serious threat to his life and his well-being, and he pulls the trigger fast. The moment the threat is neutralized, you'll see Mendoza and Nash go running. Timothy Pouliot's no longer a threat, and he walks away. Now, lest you think that John DeLee can't recognize the difference between a real threat to his life and his safety and a fake threat to his life and safety, you're going to see when the police officers arrive. Those police officers arrive, they pull their guns on him. And he knows that those police officers don't mean him harm, because the first thing he does is take the gun and put it down on the ground. He puts the gun down on the ground and away from him so quickly that the police officers, both police officers that are involved in detaining him at that point, both of them have to ask what happened to the gun, even though he did it right in front of them. Put your gun down, they're yelling at him, and he's pointing. You can see him point at the gun on the ground. So even police officers that are pointing guns at him, he knows that they're not a threat. He doesn't try to use any kind of force against them. He puts the gun down on the ground. He gets down on his knees. He puts his arms out. And he says, it was self-defense. It was 3-on-1. They attacked me. Immediately. That's what he's telling the police. If you go back and look at all the evidence in this case, at the end of this case, which you're going to have the ability to do, you're going to see that everything that John DeLee told the police right then and there was correct. Timothy Pouliot, Michael Mendoza, and Trenton Nash planned an attack on him. They used tactical maneuvers to attack him. They threatened him. They pursued him. They gave him no out. Unfortunately, Timothy Pouliot lost his life as a result of it. And again, the state's right. It should have ended many times before then. But John DeLee is not guilty of these crimes that he's charged with. And at the end of the case, we'll come back and ask you again to find him not guilty. Thank you.
So what do you guys think so far in the chat? BL sent me this article. Let me see if trying to access it. Okay, I think on this browser lets me do it. This article has all the five videos? Yeah, 5 videos. Let's take a look at these videos. We can, I mean, it's up to you what you guys want to do. We can watch the rest of day 1. Day 1 was about 3 hours long, and if you look at when it starts, we already watched this guy.
She grabs him. She tries to stop him. She says, "Don't do it." Matthew's standing on the opposite side. You'll see a setup. Right now, we know at the very least that John DeLee has been punched in the face with ring. You'll see Mike Mendoza by somebody that he knows they mean it. And if you're standing on
The state would call Officer Chad.
So for day 1, it's about an hour left. I don't know if you guys are just, I don't know if you want to or not. Day 1's about an hour left. Day 1 looks like they had a short day, and we already kind of watched most of it, I guess. Today is day 2, which I don't have time to go through 4 hours or whatever. It's supposed to be a short trial. Let's at least watch these videos now. We'll see. This happened in New Hampshire. There's no audio to this, but we can just watch. So it's just, where's the huge 6-foot+ tall guy at? If your chat's glitching up, just refresh the chat. Something happens sometimes with people. You guys can hear me, right? Except Mel's mute. You should be able to hear me. Let's see. Oh, right here, right. Here's okay, hold on. Okay, so Tim is here at the bar. I almost couldn't even see him. I didn't realize it. That's him right here. He's here sitting at the bar. Looks like he's talking with this girl too. Guess that's the friend, or I don't know. He's people next to him. Is he talking to them? Are those his friends? Maybe. Oh, I didn't even see this guy over here. Yeah, he's like over here grinding it up. Yeah, baby. This is Tim here. Okay, here he comes now. John. Towering over everybody. That girl leaves. Oh, then he shoves him over. Kind of looks like he smiles, laughs it off. I don't know if these are the bouncers. They're trying to break it up. I think that girl, maybe she went and got the bouncers. Is that what happened? They're trying to, I guess, talk to him. I don't know, calm him down or figure out what's going on. I saw someone in the chat earlier mention too that they should never, if two people get into an altercation, they shouldn't kick them out at the same time because I guess they're gonna look for each other. I guess it makes sense. Tim's still there. John is up here. The security leaves him. And he was talking to somebody right there, too. It's probably a good witness. He walks off. Right there. Crazy how you could just throw your life away, man. Kill somebody. Okay, so here's Tim. What's he doing now? Is he looking for John? Oh, no. Oh, the bouncer stopped him, too. Did he stop him? It looked like he was about to go approach him. Or somebody stopped. I don't know if that's a bouncer or not. Somebody stopped him. And he continues on. And walks by him. I think. Oh, somebody punched him though. So that was the friend, I guess, right? Hold on, let's watch that again. Where's Timmy at? Let me take it back. I see. Timmy. Okay, so Tim's here by this, like a security guy. Or a friend or somebody. Tim's walking, walks past John. And he's right here by the dance floor area. And somebody runs and like punches him. Is that Tim? Oh my gosh. No, it's not Tim. So Tim's standing here by the side. So yeah, like the article said, I guess a friend of his, right? Was Tim is standing here. Oh man. Yeah, they're like holding him down and breaking it up. Yeah. How's this guy bald at 22 years old? Tim? Not Tim, sorry, not Tim. John. He's bald at 22 years old? Jesus. All right, let's take a look at the other video. 30 seconds. This is another angle of what we saw. It's closer up. Sorry if it's like really loud too. Hoax.
That's hey, you know what? Dude, hey, God matched us in that line for a reason.
I had a friend from Texas that was not even 20, and he was bald too. I think that I forgot what chemical that is. That's like I think they have a really high, too much of a chemical. I think that causes that. Let's see. Can I make this bigger? resize it. So this is the vehicle. I think this is Tim's friend's vehicle across the street. There's John right there in the front. Kind of. I wonder if I had the wrong vehicle. Is it the white one? Oh, the white car further down. Okay. So I think on this, well, I don't even know if that one, but this one here, and this camera looks like it's the opposite side. I think. Is it? Yeah, the opposite side. Oh, that white vehicle here. Something going on right here. Oh, his gun is out. That's when he backed up. Yeah, he's pulled his gun out. The specific hormone or whatever I was talking about with the baldness thing. I mean, it's not the only thing that can cause baldness, but DHT, or also DHEA, which is like a hormone. It says DHT is made from testosterone. Sometimes young guys have like, I think, a lot of that particular hormone or whatever. Oh shit! Wow. So I guess this is the one camera angle. Shirley Harris, thank you for the super chat. Says Elijah McClain, trial of paramedics charged and death begins. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit about it in the previous stream today. A little bit about that story in the opening. We haven't watched opening statements. What I'm thinking, I think of the girl on the phone being pulled by other girl's ex-girlfriend. Oh. What I think we can do is like we can finish day one since there's only like an hour left for day one. Tomorrow's day 3. I don't know if you guys want to try to. I'm trying to figure out how we could, if you guys wanted to cover this trial, like if we wanted to. I wouldn't want to start day 2 tomorrow. I'd like to start day 3. So I don't know if we can like. I don't know if it's possible to come back later tonight after I get everything I need to get done and skim through, like try to get through day 2. So tomorrow I could start day 3. I don't know if you guys want to. This is supposed to be a short trial. I asked Mandy, she's looking into what time the trial starts daily to see what time tomorrow it starts. This wouldn't be too hard to cover because from what I've seen, day 2 was like, I don't know, 4 hours, or was that day? Yeah, day 2 is 4.5 hours. That's not even counting. Let me see. Did they have a break, or did they break it up? Let me see if that's all of day 2. I wonder if day 2 is broken up. Let me double check. Yeah, day 2 for some reason is only 4.5 hours. Here's the altar. So we get a close of what happened here. Let's just look at this real quick. Hold on. Big guy's over here. Okay, so we saw that. So he punches this guy. The guy walks up to supposedly like talk to him right here in this corner. Punches him. Tim, I guess that's Tim's friend or whatever. The other guy kind of approaches from the car too. Look, he's kind of saying something to him. Is he? Maybe he's the one that had he has the pepper spray. Right? I think he has a pepper spray. So in this point here, when we read the article, John actually, once this guy walks up to point his pepper spray, this guy John, he tries to pull out his gun, clumsy as F, drops his gun on the floor right there. So he goes to pick it up, and then he cocked it back, and his friend's trying to tell him like, "Hey, chill, chill." This guy, if a guy pull out a gun, I'm done. I'm out. I know these young guys don't think of life like that. It's like they feel invincible. They have nothing to lose. Clearly, they knew this guy had a gun. I would have been out. Done. And he's still making call outs to him. All right. And this guy, John's like, his friend somehow convinced him to kind of walk away. This guy's still talking ish, and the other guy as well. They're kind of following him. You know? That's interesting too, pitter patter. That it seemed like those two girls, they ran towards the shooting rather than away from the shooting. I think that's the one that BL thinks maybe one of them is the ex-girlfriend. What's going on with these girls? Are they fighting over here too? Is this a fight, or are they just trying to get up? Oh, she's running towards it. Yeah, she's running towards it. It's almost like the one girl is trying to hold her for what's going on here in this corner. It's like too much ish going on. So they're just sitting. I guess the shooting goes off. I don't know what she's doing. It's like she's holding her back or something, and she's running towards it. So is that maybe that's the ex? So Mandy says the trial starts at 11, which is not bad, bro. Like this is probably an easy trial to cover, probably. All right. Let's watch the other video, the last video on here.
Dude, these guys are all targets.
So again, viewer discretion is advised. I guess he's gonna shoot. I don't know if we see it or not, but oh, we do.
Get the fuck back.
Wow.
Hey, get back here, back here.
I mean, you didn't see the blood, but clearly he gets shot there. So, I mean, I'm sure they're going to show that too. That's actually what we saw earlier. This video just looks like higher definition, but they showed it during the trial. So, during the trials, you can't really control what's going to be shown. All right, so let's finish. I think let's finish day one. Let me pull up that link. Oh, here. That's going to be a tough one, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you guys think this is open and shut? Or because they kept coming to this guy and antagonizing him, coming over and over and over, and multiple times it was multiple people. Well, I don't co-sign this guy shooting him at all, but he literally punched him. He said he was a fighter, a professional fighter. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's see.
The state would call Officer Chad Fazio.
There might be about an hour for day one left. So I'll just skip ahead when we can.
Officer Fazio, if you could, just for the record, you might have to lean that microphone forward just a little bit. There we go. Can you just state and spell your last name for the record?
Yep. It's going to be Officer Fazio, Fazio.
Okay. And where do you work, Officer Fazio?
Manchester Police Department.
And how long have you worked there?
3 years, sir.
And where did you work before that?
Nowhere, sir.
This your first law enforcement job?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's your current assignment at Manchester?
I work on the midnight shift for the patrol division.
Okay. And is that what we see kind of driving around the city in a uniform capacity in a marked cruiser?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are you a full-time certified police officer?
Yes, sir.
All right. Was your role in January of this year also patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to take you back to a specific time in January. I want to take you to January 28th in the early morning hours. Were you working at that time?
Yes, I was, sir.
What shift were you working?
I was working the midnight shift.
All right. And what was your area of responsibility that night? Do you have sectors or patrols, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have different sectors. That night I was 1-6. It's kind of just like a like an extra car. It's a floating unit where we have ability to kind of go anywhere in the city.
Okay. And at about 12:47 a.m. that morning, were you dispatched to a call?
Yes, sir.
What type of call were you dispatched to?
It was a gunshot heard call.
And where was that?
It was at a 50 Old Granite Street.
Okay. And did you witness the shooting?
No, sir.
Did you witness any of the events that happened before the shooting?
No, I did not, sir.
All right. So before we talk about your response, I want to talk a little bit about that area in general. So I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 1. And do you recognize this?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. What is depicted in this satellite image? Can you just help orient us and explain what we're looking at?
Yep, so this is basically the downtown area of Manchester. Running north to south, the biggest street, that's going to be Elm Street.
If you want to step down, Your Honor, do you mind if the witness steps down?
Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, step down right here.
Good. Running north to south. We got the Snow Arena here, Lake Ave, and Granite Street are going to be running east to west. We got Market Basket here, and then Old Granite Street is going to be this little tiny street running right through there.
Okay. So you mentioned some places, but just because the record's audio recorded, sometimes I need to point out specific things. So you had mentioned the Snoo Arena, you had mentioned Market Basket. Are those accurately, reasonably inaccurate reflected in this diagram?
Yes, sir.
Where those locations are? Okay. So if we just zoom in a little bit, I'm going to take you to States Exhibit 2. Can you just help describe what we're looking at here?
So we have Granite Street right here. Again, this is just the downtown area. We've got the Bank of America. We've got two of our bars right here, which is the Soho Bistro and the Goat.
And that's Old Granite Street, so just a little bit to the right, that's Granite Street. That runs down kind of between Elm and 293?
Exactly, sir.
Okay, all right. If you want to go back, go ahead and go back to the stand for me.
Yes, I do, sir.
When you responded that night, you said you were running a uniform capacity. Do you have body-worn cameras?
Yes, I do, sir.
And where are those on your uniform?
I have mine right here. It's usually right in the center of our chest.
Okay. And so it's looking forward?
Yes, sir.
And how does it work?
As soon as you activate it by using your little like device on our wrist or wherever the other officers put it, it begins recording at that time as soon as you hit it.
Okay. And did you activate it this night when you responded?
Yes, I did, sir.
Okay. When you got to that Soho Bistro right at that corner that you pointed out, can you describe for us what you saw on your arrival?
When I got out of the car, I saw that there was a large group of people in the middle of the street, which would be Old Granite Street, and then I saw a male laying on his back in the middle of that group on the pavement.
And was that man, you said lying, was he talking, moving, making any statements?
No, sir, he was unresponsive.
Okay. And what did you immediately do at that point?
At that time, I started doing a medical assessment or a bath assessment.
What is BATH? BATH isn't BATH?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what does that stand for?
So it's an acronym. So it stands for, when you're going into a medical assessment, it's just things that you're kind of looking over. So B is bleeding, A is airway, T is tension pneumothorax, and then H is just hypothermia.
Okay, and those are the things you're trained to look for when you first respond to something like this?
Correct, sir.
Okay, are you an emergency medical provider?
No, sir.
Where did you receive this type of training?
So every year at the Manchester Police Department, we go through a course called Tactical Medical Training, and that's for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing.
Okay. Did you try to render any aid to the person who was lying on the ground?
Yes, I did, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you a still image. This is that image that was discussed earlier. I'm going to show you States Exhibit 3. Okay. This is a still image. Do you recognize where this is from?
Yes, I do, sir.
And where is this image taken from?
This is coming from my body camera.
Does this accurately reflect where the person was when you found them in relation to Soho?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay. Whose hands do we see there? We see some with gloves. Whose hands are the ones without gloves?
Those are mine, sir.
Okay. Any reason no gloves?
Just due to the response, I didn't have time to put any on.
Okay. And it looks like there's some sort of plastic or something on the left shoulder there. Is that part of the treatment you were providing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you just talk briefly and just explain to us what did you try to do to render aid to this person?
So first, I found that there was multiple gunshot wounds. One was being like up on his left shoulder area where you saw that plastic piece, and then there was another one in his armpit that showed in that picture right there. At that point, because of the location of the wound, I put a chest seal on the one that was located like near his armpit region on the shoulder, and then the armpit one, I began packing with combat gauze.
Okay. And was that an attempt to stop bleeding?
Yes, sir.
Did you perform, or did anyone that was there perform CPR?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did emergency medical responders arrive at some point?
They did.
Okay. And did they take over treatment?
Yes, they did.
Okay. At any point during your treatment, did you see any responsiveness or signs of life from the person who you found lying down?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever see the person lying on the ground ever conscious again?
No, sir.
What happened after fire and EMS treated Timmy for a few minutes?
They declared him 10-2, which in our terms is deceased.
Okay. And what was your role after 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 that person was pronounced dead?
After that, I didn't have much role. I just basically cleaned myself off and provided scene security at that point.
Okay. Did you have any further involvement with investigating what happened that night?
No, sir.
Just 1 second. When you were doing your assessment of this person lying on the ground, did you see any weapons, knives, guns, bats, anything at all on that person?
I did not, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions for defense me.
I don't think day 2 is really that bad from what I'm seeing, because it's a 4.5 hour video, but there's 1 hour where they took a break, so that's 3.5 hours. There's some one testimony at the beginning. There's that girl that somebody mentioned in the chat. She testifies. Then there's like some other, I think, break. Girl comes back. There's a police officer. Break.
Okay. Step down.
And he's done. So I'm thinking we finish day 1 now. It's only about an hour, maybe less. And then maybe tonight come back after I do a couple of things I need to get done around the house, and we can try to get through day 2 if possible. I don't know if that's going to work out for many people, but or if somebody that's seen day 2, do we need to watch the entire day 2? Do we just need to watch the girl? Do we need to watch the 2 cops? Because it looks like they're going. I mean, the evidence I'm sure is important, but.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Terrio.
Hi, good afternoon.
There's water up there too if you need it, and there's a microphone that's kind of in front of you, so if I can't hear you, I'll ask you to speak up, but just be aware that that's where we're
Thank you.
From. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes, my name is Jill Terrio, last name spelled T as in Tom, Herrriault.
And where do you work, Ms. Terrio?
Currently, I'm employed with the New Hampshire State Police Forensic Lab in Concord, New Hampshire.
And what's your position
there? There, I am a criminalist too, in the section of the Pattern Evidence Unit, and more specifically, I am a firearm and tool mark examiner.
And can you explain what the Pattern Evidence Unit is?
Excuse me. Yes, so the forensic laboratory is composed of a number of different forensic testing areas, and the Pattern Evidence Unit, which is the unit that I work in, is made up of latent print and fingerprint examiners, shoe, footwear, and tire track examiners, as well as myself that examines firearms and tool marks.
How long have you worked for the New Hampshire State Forensic Lab?
I feel like this stuff too we can kind of skip. Like we know how long they worked there.
In 2004, I began on-the-job training.
Forensic experience you've had leading up to the lab.
Yes. So in 2004 is when I was hired on by the Miami-Dade Police Department Crime Lab.
Miami-Dade.
And in that capacity, I began a 2-year in-house training program.
Yeah, I feel like the credential stuff we don't need to listen to like their whole work history.
How to use particular pieces of forensic equipment to examine. In 2004, I was also selected in that I learned about how firearms operate, instructors, when I moved a little through the professional organization that I belong to, which is called the program that, so 2 years of training.
Career.
Oh gosh, going back to 2004, it would probably be in the thousands, I would say. On the state and federal and county levels.
We're all doing it. So, Your Honor, I would ask at this time that the court recognize Ms. Terrio to be qualified as an expert.
Yeah, we don't need to listen to the qualifications, though. We can skip past that.
Rule 702 in the area of firearms.
She may offer her opinions.
So I just want to take a moment now with you to discuss some of the terminology that you use in your work. Do you have a model that helps you explain the process that you use when you're examining?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What is this a model of?
This is a plastic model of a live round of ammunition and its component parts. It's all plastic. There's no live anything associated with it.
Would you mind taking that out and just showing that to us? If you're comfortable where you are, I'll just ask if you can hold it up high enough that we can just kind of see it over some of the stuff that's in front of you.
Sure, yes.
The speaker there.
Yes.
But can you use this and explain to us what a round of ammunition is composed of?
Sure. So what I have here, again, is a plastic model of what is a live round of ammunition. Some people might know it just as a bullet, but it's actually made up of 4 different component parts. So this outer light tan color area is called the cartridge case or the casing, and what's held inside of that is gunpowder. Now, if you look at the back or the bottom of the cartridge case, there's this small circular area called the primer. The primer is a shock-sensitive material, so when this live round of ammunition is in a firearm, when the trigger's pulled and the firing pin moves forward to strike this primer area, that causes a small detonation, and that ignites the gunpowder that's housed within this cartridge case. So when that gunpowder starts to burn, a whole lot of heat and energy is built up. So that will then send the bullet, which is actually seated in the mouth or the opening of this cartridge case, all that heat and energy sends this bullet down the barrel of the firearm and onto the target. And depending on what type of firearm it is that you're firing, this cartridge case that's now empty will either be extracted and ejected from the gun and land on the ground, or it can remain inside of the gun until the person operating the gun manually removes it from the cylinder of the gun.
So you talked about the fact that a cartridge case, different things happen depending on what kind of weapon you're talking about. Can you explain what happens with a semi-automatic firearm?
Yes, but first let me explain a little bit about what a semi-automatic firearm is. Typically it's a handgun, or it can be a long gun like a rifle too. But what semi-automatic means is that with each pull of the trigger, the gun will fire. And that's a little bit different from, say, the type of firearm that like John Wayne, for example, would walk around with. He had what's called a revolver. So that's a little bit of a different way that the gun operates, where these cartridges are held in a metal piece called a cylinder. And once the person is finished shooting, these empty cartridge cases remain inside. But in a semi-automatic firearm, when the gun is fired, these empty cartridge cases are extracted and ejected, and they are sent out of the firearm. And you see a lot of those types of firearms in like movies and TV and that sort of thing.
So every time the trigger is pulled with a semi-automatic firearm, the gun fires the bullet and then ejects the empty casing in some direction. I don't want to say necessarily on this side, but
yes, it will. Each time the gun is fired, the empty cartridge case will be extracted and ejected, and typically that comes out of the gun on the top side of it, and it's ejected to the right and generally to the rear.
And then the gun puts another cartridge into the chamber so it's ready to fire again without the person having to do that.
That's correct.
Can you explain to us what the difference is between the firing of a semi-automatic weapon and an automatic weapon, or what people might think of as like a machine gun? Or just explain that distinction for us.
Sure. So a typical semi-automatic firearm is one where every time the person pulls the trigger, the gun will fire. There's a set of components on the inside that sort of resets every time when you pull the trigger and then when you let go. So every time you pull the trigger rearward, the gun fires. The cartridge case is extracted, the bullet goes down the barrel, and that whole system sort of resets, and you can then pull the trigger again to fire the gun again. Now, that's a little bit different from what you just mentioned about a fully automatic firearm, in which that process of firing the gun, extracting the cartridge case, the bullet traveling down the barrel, where that's repeated many times with the person holding the trigger backward, like holding it and keeping it to the rear, where as long as there's ammunition in the gun will continue to fire until either it runs out of ammunition or if the person lets go of the trigger with their finger.
So if you have a semi-automatic firearm, is it fair to say that, or just to be clear, does every shot from that firearm require a separate squeeze of the trigger from the person holding it?
It would, yes.
So I'd like to ask you about the testing that you did in connection with this particular case.
Yes.
Which items or items were you asked to examine?
There was a Glock semi-automatic pistol that was submitted to the laboratory for this case, as well as a magazine and live ammunition.
And as part of the examination that you did you prepare a report outlining your conclusions with regard to these items?
Yes, I did.
Did you also take photos of the firearm that you've examined?
I did, yes.
What I'd like to do is show you State's Exhibit 54.
What
are we looking at in this photo?
So this is a photograph of the firearm that I examined. When I opened the box, I typically will take a photograph of the firearm of how I received it. So inside of this gun box is the Glock pistol. There's an orange safety strap that's going through the action of the firearm, the one that's sort of running up and down along the grip there. There's two orange, excuse me, zip ties that are strapping it to the package, and on the front of the firearm, there's also a flashlight that's mounted on the rails.
And when you received it, is this how it comes packaged to you? Is there like a protocol for how the lab takes in the firearm?
Typically, yes. This is standard submission condition for firearms that come to the laboratory.
So could you describe this particular pistol and how it works?
Yes, so this is a Glock semi-automatic pistol. Glock is a brand of firearm. They're from Austria that makes all different types of models of pistol. So this is a semi-automatic, and as I mentioned, on the front end of the firearm, there's sort of a laser and a flashlight combination that's mounted there. That's the black object that's right above the ruler there. But again, it's a semi-automatic. In a separate package, there was the magazine, or sometimes what people will call a clip, but that's the device that holds the live rounds of ammunition. So the way that this firearm operates is that if you have the magazine, and it's a sort of a spring-loaded little box container that you put the live rounds of ammunition in, that would then be inserted into the grip or the handle of the firearm. That area right there is hollow so that it it fits a magazine in there. So to fire this weapon, once you have put the magazine in the grip or the handle of the firearm, the top portion of the firearm, called the slide, which is, it has kind of ridges on the left side of it right here, you would have to pull that backwards. It's under spring tension, so when you pull it backwards and then let it go, it will spring into place, and as that slide moves forward, it's going to take a round of ammunition from the magazine and then place it into what's called the chamber of the firearm. And at that point, this firearm would be then ready to fire.
So what is required of a user? You've explained to us what's required of the user to shoot a bullet from this particular pistol. Well, I should say you've explained to us how the bullet is in place for them to shoot. What is then required at that point for the user to actually shoot the gun?
So once that slide has been retracted and let to go forward, which will then chamber a live round of ammunition, at that point, this type of pistol is ready to be fired. So then, using your finger, you would then place your finger on the trigger, which in the middle of the firearm there, it's sort of that sort of triangular shape. You would place your finger on there and pull that backwards. In this particular type of firearm, pulling the trigger deactivates the safety features that are in the firearm. There's one that you can see on the outside here, which I can explain in just a moment. But pulling the trigger in a Glock pistol will then deactivate the safety features and the gun can be fired.
Can you explain to us what you mean by these safety features?
Yes. So, actually, may I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I allowed to step down and point?
If you want to come down to the side of the, maybe that would be.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this particular pistol has what's called
I'm just going to move the microphone just so we can get you on the recording.
So this pistol has what's called, one of the safety features is called a trigger safety. So if we're looking right here, this piece right here is the trigger, and this little piece that juts out, sort of sticking out from it, is called the trigger safety. And the only way that can be deactivated is by placing your finger on that trigger and the trigger safety, and, oh, there we go, and pulling that backwards. When you pull the trigger, that allows this little piece right here that's normally in contact with the frame of the gun that will keep the trigger from moving. Once you press that whole set, the trigger and the safety, that will then deactivate that safety. But otherwise, if the firearm is just sitting, no one's touching it, no one's handling it, when it's at rest, this little trigger safety will keep the trigger from moving, the whole trigger from moving backwards.
Does that also mean that if you hit the trigger from the side, for example, or jostled it in some way, would it fire at that point?
No, it would not. It protects, it protects the gun from firing unless a person's finger is actually fully squarely on that trigger. being able to pull it backwards. So if your finger were to slip off, or if you were to drop it or anything like that, that trigger safety will keep that trigger from moving rearward.
And so what's required to shoot multiple bullets from this particular gun, if you were going to shoot in a row, for example?
So as I mentioned just before, once the magazine is inserted and the slide has been retracted and a round has been placed in the chamber, you would just need to pull the trigger to fire. What happens next, all of this happens in a very, very quick fashion, in like an instant. There's a part of the firearm that's housed in this area of the slide called the firing pin, and pulling the trigger allows that firing pin to move forward and strike the primer of a cartridge. That primer was that small shock-sensitive material on the round of ammunition. Once that occurs, the firearm will go off. All of that energy and heat will send the bullet down the barrel of the firearm, and then all of that energy that was created pushes backwards on the slide and overcomes that spring pressure. That backward movement of the slide will then extract and eject the cartridge case that's now empty and eject it onto the ground. And then as the slide moves forward again, if there's ammunition in the magazine, it'll take the next round of ammunition and put it into the chamber of the gun. All of the internal parts have been reset, and you could pull the trigger again, and then the gun would fire again. And that process would be repeated until you either run out of ammunition or you stop pulling the trigger.
So just to be clear, the gun's resetting itself essentially after you use it, but you still need to actively pull the trigger to shoot another bullet?
That's correct, yes.
Is there anything else that we should know about before I ask you to sit down, is there anything else that you wanted to indicate to us about the outside of the weapon?
No, that's it, just the slide. This is the grip area right here, that's hollow where the magazine goes, the source of ammunition, and right here is the trigger.
You mentioned a flashlight also? Or what is
this device right here that's mounted on the front end of the firearm, it's a combination of a laser, like a laser pointer, and a flashlight that was mounted on there.
And so this specific firearm, does it have any sort of lever or button that you switch to turn on or off? Like sometimes people refer to safety on the external part of the weapon?
No, excuse me. This doesn't have any external safeties besides that trigger safety that we just talked about. All of the other safety features are housed inside of the firearm.
Okay. Thank you. You can take a seat here. So what sort of examination did you perform with regard to this particular weapon in the magazine?
So this firearm underwent what I would call an operability or a function test. When the firearm was delivered to the laboratory and it was ready to be worked, essentially I have a worksheet that I fill out that collects all of the information about the gun. So some of the basic things like the make, model, serial number, it would be how it operates, what are those safety features that are present on this firearm, its overall condition. I'll look down the barrel to count the number of lands and grooves, which is rifling, that's inside of the gun barrel. I will do what's called a trigger pull test to see how many pounds of pressure it takes to pull the trigger of the firearm. I will conduct what's called a jar-off test to determine whether or not it's susceptible to an unintentional discharge from it being dropped or something striking it. Once I've gone through all of that, the final step in the testing phase would be then to actually test fire it myself. And in that process, I'll select ammunition from the laboratory supply. The ammunition gets marked with the case number, T1, T2, as in test number 1, 2, 3, however many I fire. And once I've done that, there's a special room at the laboratory that houses basically a water tank, a big tank of water that a firearms examiner can test fire guns in. And that allows me to collect bullets from that firearm and collect the cartridge cases as well for any comparisons that may need to be done.
So, and you engaged in this type of testing with this particular weapon?
I did, yes.
What conclusions did you reach about the functionality of this pistol?
It was examined, it was test fired, and I found it to function normally, and I found that it was not susceptible to any type of accidental discharge due to jar off.
And did you reach any conclusions about the magazine?
The magazine that was submitted along with this, it was capable of holding 17 cartridges, and it's compatible with the with this pistol, and it was also used for test firing.
And just one more detail I wanted to ask you about, were there certain exhibit numbers that these items came to you with?
Yes, the firearm, the submission number for that, or the exhibit number, was BML, as in Bob, Mary, Larry 1, and then the package with the magazine and the live ammunition was BML 1B.
And who assigns those and letters to them?
Typically, those indications are given by typically the crime scene personnel. Let's see. Yeah, so typically the people that collect the items from the crime scene, I believe that's usually their initials of the person that collected it.
If I may just have a moment. Question, Mr. Harris, just to be clear, when you squeeze the trigger of this gun, how quickly does it go off?
Usually, well, there's a little bit of movement when you pull the trigger backwards, but pretty much as soon as you pull it backwards, you'll feel tension in there. And once that tension is sort of overcome by you pulling the trigger rearward, that allows the firing pin to move forward, and it's probably within a second or so of you pulling the trigger backwards.
I have no further questions at this time. I think defense counsel may have some questions for you.
Yes, please. I guess they're just trying to get the point across that he manually shot it. And
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It wasn't automatic. I mean, I don't think anybody's contending. It's on video that he shot Tim, right?
Terry, I just want to take you through a couple of questions about the lab first, and then we'll get into your testing.
Yes.
I believe you already testified that this is how you received this particular item at the lab?
Yes.
Okay. And you received a magazine as well, correct?
Yes, there was a second package that contained the magazine and some live cartridges.
Okay. How many live cartridges, if you recall?
There were 4.
Okay. Was that documented in your report?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a document. And I believe that there are a number of documents that get generated as a result of your examination, correct?
Yes, there are.
I'm just going to briefly ask you, are you familiar with what's called an evidence examination request?
Yes.
If I showed you an evidence examination request, would you be able to identify it?
Yes, I can check to see if the case number is what I have here in front of me.
And that's my next question. Are these items and are these examinations and tests identified in a particular way so that you know what case you're working on?
Every case that comes into the laboratory, yes, is designated with a laboratory case number that coincides with whatever the police agency case number is.
Of course. Take a brief look at this.
Thank you.
Now,
I don't see any difference between the one is the firearm is listed as BML 1, and the package with the magazine and the ammunition is BML 1B.
okay. And those were two separate packages. They came to you separately.
That's correct.
Do you recall if the magazine came loaded with ammunition?
If I can consult my notes just to refresh my memory.
Is your memory exhausted?
No.
Do you need to consult your notes to determine how many rounds of ammunition came with the package?
It's not something I have committed to memory, but I do have notes on whether or not the magazine was loaded or if it was unloaded at that time.
Please consult your notes.
Yes, in this particular instance, the magazine was loaded and the 4 live rounds were inside the magazine when I received it.
And you previously testified that you tested that magazine for function, correct?
Correct.
The magazine functioned correctly, yes?
Yes, it did.
And when you use that ammunition to test the function of the firearm, it's fair to say that you used ammunition from the lab and not ammunition that was collected as evidence, correct?
Correct. I use laboratory ammunition unless I absolutely need to use the evidence ammunition.
Okay, and so you unloaded the ammunition that came in that magazine and then tested that magazine, correct?
Right.
And then you would have preserved that ammunition as part of the evidence packet, correct?
Correct. Typically, I will place it into a small Ziploc bag, and that goes back into the original packaging with the magazine.
You document your findings, correct?
I do, yes.
As a matter of fact, you just referenced in front of the jury that you take notes as a result of this.
I do, yes.
And it's good practice as a forensic examiner to take notes and to write everything down so that in case you have to testify in front of a jury, you have an opportunity to talk about the tests you did, any values or data that you gathered, correct?
Correct.
I want to take you very briefly through something called a firearm examination worksheet. Do you have that with your notes today?
Pause for 1 second. Let me show you guys this. A lot of people have been loving this Christmas tree thing behind me. I've gotten DMs. I've gotten emails. I gotta figure out the audio issue with this. How about now? Can you hear that? Did I fix it? Did I figure it out? Let's see. No. I can just tell right here. Did I figure it out? Yeah, I think I did. Right? Just tell right here. Okay. So somebody tagged me on Twitter, the world of Twitter, of course, to you too. Look what Ikemel made me get. I watched him live, saw this step in Santa.
Look what Ikemel made me do in the last Christmas
I love
tree.
it. Beautiful
the fitness
tree.
room. And it's fitting because Santa needs to get his steps in. Thanks, Iked. Love you. Car chases and all. Crime and all. Bye.
Thank you. I'm going to post that on Instagram.
Okay.
I do, yes.
Okay. So very briefly, I want to take you through your firearm examination worksheet that you filled out. So just so that we're clear, the lab number that you have on your notes, is that L2301755?
That's correct, it is.
Okay. And is that worksheet dated 4/10/23?
It is.
Okay. Are those your initials in the top right-hand corner under examiner?
Yes, JRT.
JRT, okay. And again, the exhibit number, that matches the item that you believe you brought in for testing, correct?
I didn't bring it into the laboratory. It was submitted by police personnel, but yes, BML1 is the exhibit on my worksheet. Yes.
I guess I should rephrase. When you accepted this item in for testing, is that the correct number?
Yes, it is, BML1.
And we've already identified that it came in this box. Was there anything else about the box? Was it sealed? Was it unsealed? Anything like that?
It was sealed with blue and red evidence tape. It was a typical gun box that handguns are typically submitted to the laboratory.
That's standard, correct?
It is, yes.
And again, based upon your data and your observations, this is a Glock model handgun, correct?
Glock is the make, yes. The specific model for this gun is the Model 17.
Okay, and Glock makes a number of models, and you identified this as a Glock Model 17, correct?
I did.
Okay, and that's a caliber 9mm, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the firearm has a serial number, correct?
It does.
And you documented that?
I did.
And that serial number is AFXE105?
That's right.
Now, not all firearms have serial numbers, correct? But this one did.
Most that are imported or created or manufactured in the United States do require to have a serial number on the frame of the firearm, and this one did have a serial number on the frame.
Right. So when a manufacturer creates a frame, right, when they create a firearm that functions, they have to submit certain documentation to the federal government, and that includes the serial number, correct?
What sort of paperwork the manufacturers deal with and how their information is submitted to the federal government is out of my area of expertise. I'm not aware of any of that type of information.
The serial number, is that helped in trace?
So by the way, I'm looking at Tim's Facebook profile, which BL sent me. Thank you, BL, for sending that. One of the things I noticed off rip, I feel really bad. He has a daughter. It just makes it even more sad. But then we come into question about the whole professional fighter thing, right? And I was scrolling, and I see this. Look. Hold on, let's mute the music. So, I mean, I don't know if let's see, Journey to Success. So, I mean, looks like he does boxing. I mean, I don't know professionally if he just trains like that. I want some punching bags too. I hear that's such a good workout. But dude's ripped too. He's cut in shape. But yeah, he does have a daughter, so that's sad,
Tracing firearms?
I believe it does, yes.
Have you ever done a firearm trace?
No, I've not.
Have you ever seen a firearm trace?
No, I've not.
Now, you listed off a number of coursework, classes, certifications that you've taken as a firearm examiner as part of your career in education. Does any of that education deal specifically with Glock firearms?
One of the courses that I've taken a number of years ago was an armorer's course that was put on by Glock individual or folks that work for Glock.
Okay, and have you taken any recent courses that deal with Glock firearms or Glock firearm manufacturing?
No, I've not. I believe the class that I took was probably in 2006, if I remember correctly.
You believe that was the last time that you took a class on Glocks?
I believe that was the only time I had taken an armorer's course by Glock, yes.
Okay. You didn't attend a training called Manufacturing Methods of Glock Pistols in 2022?
That was a webinar that was presented by my colleagues in the field on Glock pistols, and I was talking a little bit about, if I remember correctly, about the way that their barrels are manufactured.
Okay. The state brought you through how this particular firearm functions, correct?
Yes.
You talk a lot about the trigger safety, which is and you identified that on the image, and you stated that there are no other buttons or levers or anything else that could be called a safety on this particular firearm, correct?
None on the external surfaces of it. There are two other safety features that are housed inside of the firearm that are not visible from the outside.
And that's the firing pin block and the drop safety, correct?
That's correct, yes.
The drop safety is sometimes called a trigger bar safety, correct?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I just know it as what Glock refers to it as the drop safety.
Okay. And all of these function to make sure that unless somebody pulls the trigger, the gun does not go off.
Correct, yes. In pulling the trigger on a Glock pistol, that will disengage the trigger safety as well as the two internal ones, the drop safety and the firing pin safety.
You conducted an examination of this particular Glock pistol with this serial number, and you found it to be functioning normally, correct?
That's correct.
You couldn't get it to go off by dropping it or striking it with a mallet or a hammer or anything like that, correct?
That's right. No, it functioned normally as I would expect it to.
And you tested and you recorded the data that this particular firearm has a trigger pull of approximately 7.5 pounds?
7 to 7.5 pounds, yes.
And that's in the normal range for a Glock firearm?
It's typical, yes.
Okay. And you, beyond the fact that the firearm functioned when you tested it, did you disassemble the firearm to check the internal mechanisms of the firearm?
No, I did not.
Okay. But you loaded it with a magazine, you brought it to a testing facility, you pulled the trigger, and it functioned properly, correct?
Yes, when I test fired it the 3 times, I found that it operated without any type of malfunction.
And again, you couldn't get it to malfunction by striking it, dropping it, or conducting any other tests like that, correct?
Right, during that jar-off testing that I mentioned, where I use basically a 3-pound rubber mallet to strike the firearm in a number of places to see if that action can cause the firing pin to move forward, I found that it didn't fire whenever it was struck, so it passed that jar-off test.
So once an individual were to place a loaded magazine into this particular Glock firearm and pull back that slide, for lack of a better term, to make it ready to shoot, they need do nothing else but pull the trigger, correct?
That's correct.
No other manipulations of the item need to be made in order to fire it, correct?
Right. Once a round has been chambered, meaning that, like you said, that slide moves forward, takes a live round of ammunition from the magazine and puts it into the chamber. At that point, the person could pull the trigger, which disengages those 3 safeties, and the gun could fire.
It's designed to work that way?
Yes.
It's a popular firearm, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
Glock firearms are used by police officers.
I know that they are duty weapons for a number of agencies.
Is the Glock firearm something you can go down to a licensed federal dealer and buy as a civilian?
I would imagine so, yes.
Just a brief note with regards to the flashlight. Other than it being a flashlight or a laser, I think you described it as, does it modify or change the function of the item, of the firearm or the handgun?
No, I don't believe it does. In fact, when I go to test fire it, I typically take those off of the front end of the firearm so it'll fit into the port of the shoot tank that I fire into.
Now, you described for the state at length the difference between a semi-automatic firearm, a revolver, potentially a rifle or a long gun, a handgun. Are there handguns that operate in different ways than a Glock handgun?
If you're talking about, do you mean like the type of operating system that each uses, for example?
I'll use language I think you're probably familiar with. The Glock firearm is considered a striker-fired firearm, correct?
That's correct.
There's
yes.
no external hammer on a Glock firearm, correct?
That's right.
So there's no hammer that a person could potentially pull back with their thumb or anything like that?
Right. The firing pin or the striker is housed inside of the slide.
Now, there are, in fact, semi-automatic firearms that do have a hammer that can either be pulled back or operated by pulling a trigger, correct?
That's right. Yes, there are.
Okay. And those would have heavier or lighter trigger pulls based upon the design of those firearms, correct?
That's true, yes. Depending on how those firearms operate, there could be a variety of trigger pull weights for depending on how the firearm operates.
And you would agree then that there are other handguns, there are other pistols that operate similarly to a Glock but have different features, such as a hammer or an external safety or thing of that nature, correct?
Yes, there are a variety of semi-automatic pistols that might operate a little bit differently, but and have different features that make the gun function.
And as the state had you testify to on direct, this firearm, you pull the trigger, it operates itself, correct? And it reloads for the next shot.
It does, as long as there's ammunition in the magazine.
And that's semi-automatic. That's the definition of semi-automatic.
Correct, that each pull of the trigger will fire the gun.
And you were particular about this, which is that the weapon will operate either until it runs out of ammunition or the person stops, correct?
Correct. With the magazine, if there's ammunition in it and you fire, you continue to fire by pulling the trigger. Yes, either you stop shooting or if you run out of cartridges, yes.
Okay. And bringing you back, this item came to the lab with a magazine that was submitted with it, correct?
Yes, it was packaged separately.
Now that magazine came in with the same incident number and the same lab number, correct?
That's right.
And that would lead you to believe that it was an item that was submitted or seized with this firearm, correct?
I wasn't there to collect it. I don't go to scenes or anything like that, but the fact that it's the same case number, the submission numbers are...
Yeah, it does feel like this part here in particular is kind of a waste of time. Just
similar in that one item is BML1, and then the package with the ammunition is BML1B.
And maybe he's just trying to cover his bases, but it's like... I don't know.
And do you recall, or can you describe for us, were there any markings on that magazine?
There's manufacturing information that's stamped on there, yes.
Okay. And do you recall, with regards to this particular item that you examined, whether or not there was manufacturing information on
on the magazine, there was the make Glock as well as the Glock logo, what caliber it was, and then a series of numbers that I'm not quite sure what they were, but I noted that they were on the magazine.
And it's fair to say that the magazine being marked Glock and this being a Glock firearm, that they're manufactured by the same company?
I don't know if the magazines are also made in Austria. I don't know the background of where the particular magazines are, but they're marked for Glock, and the magazine that I received was compatible with this Glock pistol.
Okay. Do you recall what the magazine capacity was of this particular magazine?
I do. It was marked 17.
Okay. And you recall that there were 4 live 9mm cartridges in that magazine when it was submitted to you?
That's correct.
Okay. And you said the capacity is 17?
Yes.
And so essentially the magazine came to you. I just want to be clear because I'm not sure that I heard you say this. The magazine was loaded when you received it?
Yes.
And you had to unload it?
Correct. It was packaged inside of a small manila envelope, and the magazine in there did have 4 cartridges that were in it. So when I conduct my examination, I take those live rounds out of the magazine.
Okay. As is the typical practice at your forensic laboratory, was this submitted to you? Did you check it out of an evidence room? Could you walk us through that procedure?
Yes, typically when the items are submitted to the laboratory, they are brought to the front desk of the laboratory, which is called evidence control. At that point, it's to look at a case number as well as the police agent tracks the area in the it was the gun in the magazine recorded in the computer system through scanning the barcode items, as well as myself and the other person putting in PIN numbers to make that exchange. So once I've done that, then I take the firearm to my work area, and then I begin my examination. So at that point, it's in my custody.
Put your votes on that.
Once it's in your custody, and once you take it to your examination area,
poll
you
is
take
blank.
care to document.
If the poll is blank, I don't know if we're still able to answer yes or no. The question is, what should they do tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern? This is about to be
anything
over
you're
now.
examining, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And so, the manufacturer, the capacity of the magazine, all of those things are important, correct?
Yes, all of that information about the gun is what I document in my
Including the
notes.
fact that it came to you loaded, correct?
The gun itself wasn't loaded.
I apologize. The magazine came to you loaded.
The magazine did have ammunition in it, but at that point, the magazine and the firearm are separate, so packaged separately, and there's no issue of like a loaded gun or anything like that coming in.
Understood, and that's why they're separated, essentially to keep them safe. But again, my question to you was that magazine was loaded as it came to you, correct? And you documented all that information.
Yes, it was.
I have no further questions for this witness, Judge.
That's it for day one.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a good time to break. So we will break for the day. We will resume tomorrow.
So yeah, that was day one. Now, if you guys want to come back later tonight, I was thinking 9:30 p.m. Eastern, so I have enough time to finish what I got to do. The first day is 4.5 hours.
And I mean, she's in a slightly better position than other jurors to know the layout. I'm not sure that makes a big difference.
Got some juror stuff. The first witness, let me see who this is.
Better use the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So I hope you got.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please have a seat.
And there's water there if you need it for you. There's a mic. What? Could you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Officer Eric Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
And where are you currently employed, Officer Smith?
I'm currently employed with the City of Myrtle Beach Police Department. Over with.
Sir.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
So I'd like to turn your attention now to January 27th of 2023. Were you working with Manchester PD that night?
Yes, ma'am.
So the first witness is a cop, and he goes over evidence. It looks like body cam.
That worked. So the person that you saw, can you describe what he looked
So, and he's on there for quite a bit of while. Then they take an hour break. They come back, and let's see what they do. This is the one I want to see. This is, I think, one of the girls that was there. I don't know if this is the ex. I want to see this one. She testifies.
Correct.
Officer Jeffrey.
So she testifies, and then there is an officer again that does some video. So, yeah, so put in the vote if you want to come back. 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So, I mean, if we get through this tonight, then tomorrow we can start with day 3. It's supposed to be a short trial, and Mandy says that it starts at 11 a.m. tomorrow Eastern. So, and the days have been pretty short. It's starting kind of late. Probably wouldn't be hard to watch, I guess. For the people that say the poll is blank, are you still able to vote, or is just everything blank? You got a climbing Santa too? Oh, man. All right, so I guess we'll come back tonight. Try to muster through this if it's interesting. Hopefully it's interesting. I don't know this guy. Cop. I definitely want to see what this witness has to say, the girl. and then there's another cop. All right, so let me schedule the stream. 94% say yes. It's only 100 votes, though. I think most people are glitched out for the poll, it seems like. But we'll come back anyway. I mean, we can come hang out. So we'll put 9:30 p.m. and I'm going to try to get everything I need to get done by then. And the only danger we run into doing a late stream is a chase. But I have the laptop set up. So if there's a chase tonight while we're watching the trial, I'm going to let the trial play. I'm going to cover the chase and then bounce back. So the poll is watch day 2 tonight of the trial. So I'm going to make some dinner, take a shower, hang out with the baby. Oh, I just screwed something up. Oops. Fix this for tonight. Hopefully it didn't start. Did it start? Okay, good. It didn't start. There we go. Okay, good. That's for tonight. Redirect. What does he get into? The gun works? I know, right? I don't understand what the whole point of all that questioning was. All right. So, yeah, man, I'll catch you guys later. Catch you guys in a couple hours. All right. Relax. Do what you got to do. I'll see you later. I hope this thing is somewhat interesting. I don't know if it's interesting or not at all, but I mean, I'd like to see the key witnesses, see what the defense is going to bring on, and then, of course, what the jury decides. I still think it might be a bit of an uphill battle, but all right, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.